Alright, hi everybody. Marisa Douglas, Atlantic Center for Independent Living's Peer Support Specialist here. You all probably know me, but in case there are some new people watching us today, wanted to reintroduce myself. So today is going to be the first video in a series I am going to be doing about various disability topics, really, where I want this series to explain many different things about disability. Today's video is going to be about what we mean by disability when we say that word, like what does it actually mean. I'm going to be doing next probably a video about language and disability, like the words we use to describe people with disabilities and disability itself. And I want to eventually maybe do videos about accessibility, and if anybody has any questions about disability they want answered, like if you're a person without a disability and you have always wondered about X topic, feel free to ask them and I will try to answer them if you feel so inclined. So like I said, this video is going to be about what do we mean when we say disability? What does this word even mean? And what do we mean when we say somebody has a disability or is disabled? So there's a lot of different ways people can define the word disability, or what that means to a person. So I thought maybe we could go through some definitions and talk about them all. So the first definition I thought we might want to start with is the good old dictionary. What does the dictionary say that a disability is? So the dictionary defines disability as a condition or impairment that affects somebody's movements, senses, and activities. Okay, that's a pretty good definition. It's something that limits somebody or affects their daily activities. And that is actually pretty similar to the next definition, which is the Americans with Disabilities Act definition. So Atlantic Center for Independent Living is in America, so that's kind of what we use to define disability. But the ADA says that a disability is any condition that substantially limits a person's daily life activities. It can be physical or mental. So anything that limits a daily life activities, such as walking or getting dressed by yourself, going to work, driving, anything that limits, those daily activities that we do every day, and even more that I didn't name. I could sit here and list them all, but I don't think we have time for that. That is considered a disability under the ADA. And it can't just minorly affect them. It does have to majorly affect them. So that's another important detail. And a person, in order to be protected under the ADA, has to either have one of these conditions or have a history of them or be regarded as having one of them. That's what the ADA says. Other countries' laws regarding disability and who is considered to legally have one might be very different. I would be interested in, knowing what those laws are. Maybe if we got some international viewers, we could do a video about that. So those are, dictionary definition and the American legal definition, which are pretty good. But then we also have the option of looking at disability from kind of a broader cultural sense of how we define disability, and as particularly, again, where I'm from, and as Americans, more Western views of disability, through models of disability. And essentially, models of disability, really, you can just say they're ways of thinking about disability and about, who has a disability and who doesn't, or who's impacted by it, and all things like that. So there's two big models of disability. There are several other ones that are less talked about and less popular, I think, that maybe I will leave some reading about in the little description box down there. Just if you're curious about other ways of thinking, because there are multiple, but I will only cover the two big ones. So the first big one is the medical model of disability. And the medical model of disability is the one that we are all probably pretty familiar with. It's pretty unconscious, really, to be, familiar with it. And essentially that says that disability is inherently a medical problem. And it is a medical condition that a person has, and it also says that people who have disabilities should be consistently trying to alleviate, the impact, or lessen the impact, really. I shouldn't say really alleviate, but lessen the impact of their disability on their functioning, and always, be trying to treat it, try to be more normal, whatever, that word means. I kind of don't like that word, but more normal, more typical, able-bodied, what have you. Try to, function like the majority of the world. So, take me. I am a wheelchair user myself. I have a disability called spina bifida, which means I have a certain degree of paralysis. My spine didn't quite form right, so I have a good degree of paralysis, and I use a wheelchair. So the medical model of disability would say, okay, you have a disability called spina bifida, you use a wheelchair user, or you are a wheelchair user, I don't know what I just said there, and you need to go through the treatments to try to restore your functioning as much as possible. Try to go through physical therapy to get you up and walking again, try to go through surgeries to, correct your legs. I've had a couple that they thought would improve my walking. Maybe it did to a degree, but not much. I did walk at one point, but now I do use a wheelchair. So that's, and the medical model really says, that people with disabilities should always be trying to, lessen the impact of their disability on their functioning. Another couple more examples of the medical model include, like, maybe going through psychological therapy to lessen the impact on your disability, and to be more functional or more normal. Again, that word. And things like that. What else can I say about the medical model? So that's really the medical model in a nutshell. It's just that it's a view of disability as being, a problem with the individual. It's a medical condition that they have, and they should try to lessen the impacts of it so that they function as much like everybody else as possible. That is the medical model, really. I know I said I'm going to do a video about language later, and I am, but last note about the medical model is that it does kind of encourage person-first language, which we know is saying people with disabilities as opposed to disabled people, because it's emphasis on the disability is something the person has, it's not what the person is. And people that believe in other models can still use person first, but that's kind of a discussion for the next video. But that is more medical model thinking. So that brings us to the next model, which is a social model of disability. And the social model of disability is kind of maybe not completely the opposite of the medical model, but it is pretty different. So the social model of disability really says that disability isn't something inherent in a person. It's something that is created when a person with an impairment, which would be the medical condition, such as me using a wheelchair. So when my impairment of, limited mobility, not being able to walk using a wheelchair, interacts with society. So the social model says my disability is, when I go out in my wheelchair and I encounter a place I really want to go but doesn't have a wheelchair accessible entrance, whether that be a lack of ramps, not wide enough doors, or discriminatory attitudes against wheelchair users, and things like that, or a lack of elevators could also be a good one. So I'm being disabled by society that doesn't provide access for wheelchair users, considering that's my main disability. Another great example of a social model of disability is if a deaf person who uses American Sign Language went to a concert, a play, a conference, something like that. Something where an interpreter should be provided, or captioning should be provided, and it's not being provided, and they don't have access to, the same language access as everybody else. That is society and the lack of access creating a disability. And that's how the social model of disability would view that situation. What else can I say about the social model? So the social model really, whereas the medical model thinks that medicine is a cure for disability, and that's how we should lessen the impact of disability, through people going through surgeries or taking medicines, or physical therapy, or other types of therapy, occupational, psychological, things like that. The social model really says no, we should be alleviating disability, or lessening the impact of disability, the negative, sides of disability by accommodating for disability. So wheelchair users shouldn't have to worry about whether the store they want to go to will have a wide enough doorway, because they just should have a wide enough doorway. That should just be a given, because it's a given for people who walk that they'll always have a wide enough doorway. It should be a given that if we're having a big public event, there should be sign language interpreters for deaf or hard of hearing people. There should be, another is making adjustments such as not using strobe lights when they're not necessary, which I don't think is ever necessary, actually, to accommodate for people who have epilepsy and are in danger around those lights, in danger of having a seizure. And also, just taking into consideration the needs of, people with disabilities, and accommodating for them, and also in other ways making social systems work better for people with disabilities, so that people with disabilities can also participate in life to a greater extent than they can now. Again, at least speaking from an American standpoint, many systems are very limiting to people with disabilities. Like, we need health care, and many of us go on our government Medicaid system, but then you have to stay under a certain income level, which leads to quite a few problems where you're now pretty stuck in poverty. Some states do have good programs, but a lot of times you're very stuck in poverty, and you don't have access that people with higher incomes do. There's also, we're not allowed to, or not that we're not completely allowed, but your ability to marry might come at the expense of your health care. And, just accessing healthcare is incredibly hard in America with a disability, which, you think it should be easier for people with disabilities. We're the ones that really need that, but it's not, which is, another system that, again, it's disabling us, which kind of brings me to my final point again about language. I know I said I would talk about language in another video, but we'll review this in that video and talk about other things. There's many things to talk about with language of disability. The social model of disability really talks about identity first language. Now, again, it's not a rule. You can believe in the social model and still prefer person first. I know many people that do, actually. But the social model really does emphasize identity first language, because it says that disabled people are a social group, like they're a subset of the population, and also it's the concept of, it's not our disabilities as in our medical conditions or impairments. Like I said, the social model does use the word impairment to explain like the medical, like the physical, or the, possibly psychological, mental, like the things going on with us, and then uses the word disability to explain the interaction between our bodies or minds and society. So it says that society, through negative attitudes, discrimination, or inaccessibility, like I said, with ramps or elevators or strobe lights or lack of interpreters, it creates the disability and it disables us. So disabled in that sense under the social model kind of also it kind of becomes like an adverb in a way because it's saying that we are disabled, and it's describing us, but it is also something that's being done to us. So it says that again that we're disabled by society, and the way society is set up for people that don't have impairments or disabilities or medical problems, conditions. So I think that about it, about the models of disability, the ways we think about disability. If there's anything else that you don't think I covered, feel free to ask questions in the comments. Again, if you have other questions that you want me to address in videos later on down the line, I would be more than happy to. Just leave those in the comments too. And I will see you in the next video. All right. Bye-bye.